In Matthew 17:12, Jesus Christ said that Elijah had already come. Jesus was saying that the prophecies in Malachi 3:1 and Malachi 4:5 had already come to pass. Jesus was correct. Elijah had already come. It was John the Baptist. However, countless people who identify as Christians claim that Elijah will come in the end times. Some false teachers might try to deceive you by pointing out that Jesus used a certain future tense phrase rather than a past tense phrase. However, the explanation of why Jesus used that future tense phrase is rather simple. In Matthew 17:10, the disciples did not ask Jesus if Elijah will come first. Rather, they used slightly different phraseology, and Jesus Christ answered them according to their phraseology. Listen to Matthew 17:10. And the disciples asked him, then why do the scribes say that first Elijah must come? The disciples were asking about the scribes' teachings. The disciples were basically asking, why do the teachings say that Elijah comes first? And then in Matthew 17:11, Jesus Christ discussed some of the specifics of those teachings. In Matthew 17:11 through 12, Jesus Christ was basically saying, here is how the teachings go. Elijah comes first and will restore all things, future tense. However, I tell you that that has already happened. Elijah has already come. The phrase will restore all things is indeed future tense, but that does not mean that Jesus was referring to the then future. Jesus was discussing the teachings of the scribes, and those teachings included a future tense phrase. Jesus simply quoted that future tense phrase, despite the simple fact that Elijah had already come. Jesus said Elijah had already come. Do you believe Jesus Christ? Perhaps you've heard of Christians who are excited about an end-time Elijah. Have you heard them singing, "These are the days of Elijah"? Do a YouTube search for that song. You'll find it. Jesus Christ said Elijah has already come, but Christians are eagerly awaiting their beloved end-time Elijah. Some Christians, that is. And soon we will get somebody who looks like Elijah. Remember, Elijah called down fire from heaven. The false prophet of Revelation 13:13 will call down fire from heaven. That will make him look like Elijah, and Satan will go to work from there. Remember the scriptures. Malachi 4:5, I will send you Elijah the prophet. Malachi 3:1, I will send you my messenger who will prepare the way before me. John the Baptist, as the return of Elijah, already came and pointed to Jesus Christ. John the Baptist, as Elijah, prepared the way for the Messiah. But people who identify as Christians and ignore the fact that Jesus said Elijah had already come are awaiting their beloved end-time Elijah. When the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 calls down fire from heaven, Satan will try to convince you that that is the return of Elijah. We know from 2 Kings 1:10 and 2 Kings 1:14 that Elijah called down fire from heaven. The Antichrist and the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 will point out the fact that John the Baptist did not call down fire from heaven, and they will say, John the Baptist was not the return of Elijah. Only somebody who calls down fire from heaven can be the return of Elijah. The false prophet of Revelation 13:13 will call down fire from heaven and will make himself look like Elijah. And then the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 will point to the Antichrist and say, this is the Christ. That will look like Elijah in the Malachi 3:1 prophecy, preparing the way for the Christ. But that's the Antichrist he'll be pointing to. The people who identify as Christians and who are eagerly awaiting their beloved end-time Elijah will look at the Antichrist and think that he is the Christ. However, when you see the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 call down fire from heaven, and when you see people calling him Elijah, and when you say, no, that is the false prophet of Revelation 13:13, people who teach pre-trib rapture will tell you, you will never see the Antichrist or the false prophet of Revelation 13:13. You will get raptured 3.5 years before the Antichrist gets revealed. And now you can see why Satan loves pre-trib rapture doctrine and the doctrine that claims that there will be an end-time Elijah. And there's more. Isaiah 9:6 prophesied that the government will rest on the shoulders of the Messiah. Perhaps the fulfillment of that will be when Jesus Christ rules planet Earth during the millennial kingdom era. But the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 and the Antichrist will say, Jesus did not hold political office back in the first century, and that proves that Jesus was not the Messiah. And if the Antichrist is the UN secretary or any kind of government official, the false prophet of Revelation 13:13 and the Antichrist will say that that political office is the fulfillment of Isaiah 9:6. People will think that the Antichrist is the Christ. And there's more. You know how widespread child trafficking and kidnapping has become. The Antichrist will have the perfect solution. Put a microchip in everybody. Make them take it. You know, that will actually be the mark of the beast. Child trafficking and kidnapping would cease to exist if everybody had a microchip, the mark of the beast. And anybody refusing to have a microchip implant will look like a crazy person. Christians will look like crazy people. But pre-tribbers will say, that's not the mark of the beast. We will get raptured at least 3.5 years before the mark of the beast gets implemented. Go get your microchip. And people say that the timing of the rapture is not a salvation issue. If you listen to pre-tribbers and take the mark of the beast, it will be a salvation issue.